Stotioning, Aina made her way to Hestia's side. She spoke in a low voice and never made eye contact. Hestia was a bit surprised at first, but then took a quick look around before casually filling her role as guide and leading Aina into a corner. "I'm surprised you'd approach me like that. You plan for everything, don't you, Ms. Advisor?" "Sorry to trouble you." The two of them continued their conversation while pretending to work, never looking at each other. In response to Aina's "Do you have a moment?" Hestia shook a weapons rack to cover her as she nodded yes. "I have information concerning the supporter employed by Mr. Belcranil." Hestia's hand stopped as a shiver ran up her spine, making her shoulders twitch. She turned to face Aina. "I'm going to tell you about the familia she belongs to, so please listen well." The more Aina told her about what she'd learned last night at Loki Familia, the tenser Hestia's expression became. Even though the possibility of her being under the influence of Soma was rather low, the supporter working with Bel might have had another motive, like depriving him of all his possessions, when she'd approached him. Aina said that she would encourage Bel to break off all interaction with said supporter before something serious happened. "Goddess Hestia, can I ask you to convince him for me?" Aina looked down at the goddess with her emerald green eyes. Hestia looked back at her, speechless. Since leaving Bel behind, Lily had stayed on one clear path straight to the upper levels. She cleared the 10th level and 9th level with no trouble at all before arriving on the 8th level floor. Lily knew every twist and turn of the dungeon down to the 11th level like the back of her hand. Her method for relieving adventurers of their valuables was, like she had just done to Bel, to create a diversion and make her move during the ensuing commotion before making her escape, before the mark even noticed she was gone. However, if they caught up to her, it was all for naught. The only way she had to avoid this was to memorize the dungeon maps sold at the guild. Even if she encountered monsters, she had become an expert at leading said monsters to other adventurers and letting them take care of it. In fact, that was about all she did. Once she got to the surface, all she had to do was return to her normal self and sell off the goods. There was no way any of her victims could catch up at that point. Alone, she could do nothing. But with a bit of planning and a vicious mindset, Lily had tricked many adventurers. Her reason for stealing from adventurers? To put it simply, revenge. She decided that she'd take back what was once hers from the people who had tormented her all of her life. She had repeatedly bared her fangs at members of Soma Familia. She felt no remorse for her actions, it was her right as the victim. All adventurers were adventurers. That had always been her reasoning, and that was never going to change. Everything so far had been the same, until she felt cruel looking away from one boy's face. Now that it's mine, Lily almost has enough money. She had no interest in Soma. Actually, quite the opposite, she hated it. A piece of her had a grudge against it as well. Even just the smell of it might make her fall under its spell again, make her go crazy like an animal. Therefore, this money was going toward her salvation. Someday, she was going to trade a large sum of money for her release from Soma Familia. The point was, Lily was a possession of the god Soma. She tried to get the guild involved, but they didn't have the resources to help her and did nothing. The only thing she could do was convince Soma to let her go by offering an extraordinarily large amount of money in exchange for her freedom. She made up her mind, she would get her freedom with her own two hands. Lily came to a halt as she stepped into some tall grass. An 8th level goblin was walking around in front of the only exit from this room, directly in front of her. There were no signs of other adventurers. The goblin blocked her path. Even if she tried to sneak around it, she couldn't go forward. Doubling back and taking another route would take far too long. While Bel surely had his hands full with the onslaught of monsters heading his direction and wouldn't be able to pursue her at top speed, there were other dangers in the dungeon. Time was of the essence, so Lily decided to break through. "Lily's not built for this kind of roughhousing, yeah?" said Lily under her breath as she rolled up the right sleeve of her cream-colored robe. She pulled out a small handheld bowgun. The magic sword would be wasted on a goblin. Stepping forward with her right leg, she leveled the bowgun at the monster. Prams in general were known for having amazing eyesight. Lily's round chestnut eyes zeroed in on the goblin, lining it up dead center. The monster finally noticed her as well. FFFTT. A golden arrow shot out of the bowgun with frightening speed. The arrow carved through the air and bore straight into the goblin's right eye. Gi-ah-ah-ah. Excuse me. The goblin screamed out in pain, clutching its eye as Lily used the opportunity to scurry by the monster into the exit. Lily could fight, too, as long as she had a strategy. However, she had to rely completely on weapons and items. Slaying a single monster did not justify the amount of money required to take it down, not by a long shot. Lily only fought against monsters in self-defense. Lily's jealous of Mr. Bell. He could do everything by himself. Starting with her magic, Cinderella, Lily's strengths were not suited for combat. Lily was very weak physically. She gained her magic shortly after swearing revenge against adventurers, and hoped that it would transform her into something stronger than her weak self. She was extremely depressed when she learned the truth about it. However, she soon learned how to use it in a different way to exact revenge. She pushed her magic to its limits and figured out what it could really do. As proof of its power, her magic allowed her to consistently steal many items, using the same strategy on many adventurers. Lily had become powerful enough to laugh at the weakling she once was. And, 7th level. She made her way up the staircase jutting out of the wall, to the next floor up. Lily kept her speed up as she raced past the light green dungeon walls. After this floor, the rest is a piece of cake. In terms of the monsters, the 7th level was the last mountain she needed to climb. It was too early to lose focus. After this floor, she could handle everything on her own. Her lips started to curve into a smile as she bolted into the next room. Ain't this a surprise? I've hit the jackpot. Eh? It happened when she came out of a small corridor and into a room. A leg appeared from the side and caught Lily's short body just under her knee. Her balance gone, Lily fell face first onto the dungeon floor. What was that? Dazed and confused, she put her hand into the dirt to push herself up. That's when a long shadow fell over her. She was yanked up before she could turn around. Half a second later a boot was slammed into her nose. Jaya? I'd better be getting an apology, you piece of shit prum. A powerful fist nailed her left cheek. A river of blood flowed from her nose. Just as her eyes were beginning to focus, she took another kick to the chest. Her oversized backpack dislodged from her shoulders, rolling backward like a snowball. The next hit wasn't far behind. The heel of a boot bore into the small of her back. H. Her body bounced off the floor like a ball, bouncing once, twice. Lily was swept up in a whirlpool of pain as her body finally came to a halt. Ha. Ha 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 ha. That's a good look for you. Plastered in blood and dirt. With the world spinning around her, Lily finally caught a glimpse of the voice's owner. It was a human adventurer. The same one who'd been talking to Belle yesterday. Her former employer. The man's jaw was pointing at the ceiling as he looked down on her with a sneer. Thought it was about time for you to throw away that kid. I wet up a net for you. Been dying to say hello. Net? The dungeon is huge. Waiting for you by myself would have been as boring as looking for a needle in a haystack. Got myself some partners, increased my chances. The dungeon itself was extremely large. The floors below level 5 were wider than Central Park. Despite its size, there were only 3 or 4 ways to get this far down. The man had stationed his partners at each of the pathways and waited for her arrival. Of the 4, Lily had chosen the route that the man was watching. Couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that white-haired kid running around with a runt. Don't tell me, the kid it had something that made your eyes go ole Twitter? Are you dense? Exclamation mark. But I don't care about that. Before I tell you limb from limb as a thank you for stealing my sword, think I'll make you play along. He declared with a sadistic twinge in his eyes that he would take everything from her. Lily did her best to cup her still bleeding nose as the man ripped off her robe, causing everything inside to fall to the ground. She was now wearing only her underclothes, unable to do anything to resist him. Magic stones, a gold watch. Hey, you had a magic sword? Ha 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 ha. So you stole this, too, eh? The man was overjoyed by his discovery. His mood improved greater still when he saw a knife with a glossy shine. Spinning the crimson knife in one hand, a dark smile grew on his lips. He, all right, I'll let you off the hook, you piece of shit Prum. After getting a present like this from ya, I'll show you a bit of mercy. Nice guy, ain't I? Higher. I. Two swift kicks to the stomach and Lily was reeling in pain. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Lily's heart raced inside her small chest, her brain in all-out panic mode. She knew at that moment that if she didn't get away now, she would meet a miserable fate at the hands of this man's brutality. Just as she took in a deep breath, another man's voice came from somewhere distant. You certainly went all out, Master Gedo. A new person was coming toward them. Question mark. Looking in the direction of the new voice, Lily saw someone she recognized. He was one of the adventurers who'd tried to get money out of her the other day. Just one of the many members of Soma Familia who had tried to do the same thing many times before. Then it came to her. The man's partners were members of Soma Familia. Most likely, after talking with Belle, he had seen them arguing with her and decided to ask them for assistance. Get this, Kanu. The runt had a magic sword. Just as you thought, looks like she's been stealing all over the place. Ha 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 ha. Is that so? An adult male animal person, the one called Kanu, narrowed his cloudy, dark eyes at the happy man, the adventurer called Gedo. But Gedo was in such a good mood that he didn't notice. Master Gedo, I have a suggestion. What's that? Hand it over? Hey, now, I caught the Prum, I should have first dibs on. That's not quite it. Not just the magic sword, but everything you took from her. I suggest you leave it all on the ground. Huh? Gedo looked at his partner with a confused smile. Before he could ask any questions, however, Kani pulled something out from behind him and threw it. It landed just in front of Lily. Kii! Lily screamed. Killer ant? It was only the top half, making it easier to carry. The bloody mess was still oozing purple liquid from many gashes all over its body. It had likely been slain only a few minutes ago. No, not slain. Its mouth was still moving, an arm twitched in agony. You might have thought at first that all of us were hunting together. There's a chance that Master Gedo, who has conquered many flaws, is stronger than we are. So the three of us put our heads together and came up with this plan here. Plop, plop. Two more barely alive killer ant bodies landed close to them. Two more adventurers had arrived in the room from separate entrances, both of them working with Kanu. The three masses of dying ant let out cries that united to create eerie echoes throughout the room, like a curse from another world. Both Gedo's and Lily's faces turned pale. Killer ants released a special pheromone when they were close to death. It was a call for help, and other killer ants would answer. The three balls of still-breathing ant flesh had been releasing the pheromone for some time. The room had become a ticking time bomb. Are you serious? Gedo said. There were three ants in that state calling for help. Just how many of their friends would answer? The expressions on Kanu's and his allies' faces were surprisingly calm and unchanging, even during Gedo's screaming. Only Lily correctly understood the adventurer's irrational obsession with money, having been under the influence of Soma herself. You don't want to become their prey while you're fighting with us, now do you, Master? Hi-e? 5 killer ants poked their heads into the room entrance behind Gedo. This room had 4 entrances. Kanu and his cronies were standing in front of 3 of them, the last one now had killer ants in the way. Gedo gritted his teeth, shaking in a mixture of fear and anger. His pale face hardened as he threw everything he'd taken from Lily to the ground. Damn you all. Kanu grinned as he stepped aside to allow the man to pass. Gedo took one last look around the room before running past him. Not a moment later, a barbaric roar erupted from the corridor, followed by the sound of a sword clang. After that, silence. A shell-shocked Lily had no way to see what happened. There was a wall of giant ants between her and the exit. Gee. ? A killer ant stepped in front of Lily as the room was flooded with the monsters. Her injured body wouldn't move like she wanted it to, and she couldn't get out of the way of the monster's incoming claws. Blood suddenly sprayed into the air. The injured killer ant fell to the floor. Are you okay, Erda? Mr. Kanu. Kanu looked down on the girl, his mouth nothing more than an upward rip in his face and a purple blood-splattered sword resting on his shoulder. I came for you, to save you. We are in the same familia, after all. Lily bit her lip and clenched her fists as the man in front of her spoke like some kind of hero. His partners were holding the killer ants back, for now. That's right, we all came for you, Erda. In this desperate situation, we didn't abandon you, see? Yes. You know what I'm saying, yeah? He wrapped his arm behind Lily's shoulder as he spoke. His tone sounded as though he were acting in a play rather than facing death. His eyes might have been looking at Lily's quivering body, but in reality he didn't see her. All he could see was money, to be more specific, the soma that the money would get him. Kanu's expression was calm and collected, but on the inside he was overwhelmed with anxiety. Hey, speed it up. We can't hold them, said one crony. I know. Kanu looked to Lily. Yesterday you said you had no money. Drop the act. If you try to pull something like that again. Okay. Okay. Seeing the direness of her situation, Lily nodded with a defeated look on her face. She had no time to be angry, so Lily grabbed a small key that was hidden as part of a necklace and held it out to him. The hell is this? A key to a gnome rental storage unit in Arario's eastern ward. Talking about a safe point? To think you kept large amounts of vowels in a box that small. Gnome jewels are in there. Ah, now I gotcha. The jewels and minerals that gnomes collected were highly valuable. Their worth rarely changed, so there was always a buyer. Lily had exchanged most of her ill-gotten gains from coins into gnome jewels at the gnome trader because carrying large amounts of money would look suspicious if she were caught. Another dark grin graced Kanu's lips as he nodded and grabbed the collar of Lily's shirt. With a big wad of fabric in his hand, he pulled Lily to her feet and then up off the floor, placing her level with his eyes. Mr. Kanu, what are you? We're in quite the pinch, you know. Look around. We're being surrounded. At least 20 killer ants had made an almost complete ring around them. There was only one exit that was still open for escape. Lily futilely kicked her legs as she hung in the animal man's grasp, but it was like trying to swim in the air. Kanu, 5 o'clock shadow and all, made one last big smile. By us sometime? ? We'll make our escape while you draw them away, Erda. That exit over there isn't blocked yet, so we can take a few of them while you act as a decoy. Terror filled Lily's eyes as she looked back at him. Chancing a look to the side, she saw Kanu's partners had the same savage smile on their faces. Without money, you're useless. At least do your job to help us one last time, supporter. Lily was thrown. Making a tall arc in the air, she cleared the ring of killer ants. The monsters quickly locked onto her airborne body and followed her. For Lily, time stood still. She watched the adventurers make a break for the exit, smiling their evil smiles, before finally hitting the dungeon floor. The impact knocked the wind out of her, but nothing else. Ha ha. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling and laughing awkwardly, broken. The killer ants were all coming in her direction. So this is how it ends, she thought to herself. There was no reason to laugh, but she couldn't help it. Adventurers truly were not worthy of trust. If this is some kind of punishment for everything up till now, it's far too cruel, her train of thought continued. But wait. If this is punishment for what Lily did to Mr. Bell, maybe it's okay. Despite being an adventurer, he didn't act like any adventurer Lily knew. If this was her reward, then strangely she felt as though it was her duty to be punished. Kia. More killer ants than she could count were making noises and advancing on her in a wave of pincers and claws. There was no way for her to escape. She had landed against a wall. The monsters had surrounded her. They approached in an ever-closing arc around Lily as she lay helpless on her back. Lily's sad. Her words were drowned out by the continuous pounding of hundreds of killer ant feet on the floor. A professional supporter. Always treated like something else. Adventurers never felt remorse for the luggage carrier, even if the supporter fell. They were useless. Right where Lily, who could do nothing by herself, belonged. That was, in fact, who she was. Her pathetic self. Lily hated the person she was most of all. Gods, why? No one ever called out to her. No one ever depended on her. She was always used, never needed. She hated how weak she was. She hated the fact that her life was always directed by someone else's hand. Lily wanted to become someone else, anyone else but Lily. Even the magic she learned showed that she didn't want to be herself. Why did you make Lily, Lily? She didn't know how many times she had thought about dying. She had wished that she could go to the gods and ask for a reset more times than she could remember. She wanted to become a different Lily. Any Lily was better than this one. In the end, Lily was too weak to go through with it. But somewhere in her heart, Lily always wanted a reset. That's right. It doesn't matter anymore. The half-ring of monsters around her was getting closer and closer. Flop. Her cheek hit the floor as she turned her head to the side with a small, accepting smile on her face. One killer ant was so close it looked gigantic from her new line of sight. Its legs stopped right in front of her face. So lonely. Lily was surprised by the words that rolled off her tongue. It was how she really felt. Only at the end did she realize it. Oh, Lily was lonely. She was used to not being needed. Used to it, but the loneliness never went away. Alone. Not having anyone to rely on or depend on her made her lonely. She got used to being alone but never got used to being lonely. So that was it, Lily. She wanted to be with someone. She lamented the fact that only now did she see the truth. The closest killer ant raised its claws. They glinted in the light shining down from the ceiling above. Goodbye. She could finally die. It was finally over. She could go to the gods. The tiny girl whom no one would save, the girl who was worth nothing, the lonely girl. She could reset at last. Finally, Lily can. And Lily was so close to finding someone, too. Is Lily finally going to die? She lightly smiled, a tear rolling down her cheek. And then, fireball. An explosion of flames. Huh? A scarlet inferno engulfed the room. It's not possible. Hestia looked up at Aina and answered with a long sigh. What do you mean? That's not going to happen. Belle has already decided not to cut ties with that supporter. Aina stood completely still, not expecting that response. Hestia let out another sigh. Hestia gently closed her eyes and remembered what had transpired last night. Goddess, even so, if she is in trouble, I want to help. Hestia had mentioned that the supporter, the girl, shouldn't be trusted. That was Belle's response. Maybe Hestia hadn't heard him the first time, but Belle quickly put those words together as the goddess tried to sway him. However, Belle couldn't listen to her and change his mind. That girl, she seemed lonely. I don't think she knows it, though. It's like she's numb, just smiling a cute smile. She thinks she's fine on her own. Belle kept on talking about Lily and the things he had seen. Hestia had never seen this girl, but she kept listening. On top of that, Belle added his own memory to the conversation. Wasn't it you, goddess, who helped me when I was lonely? He saw a bit of himself in Lily. Before meeting Hestia, Belle wandered around Terraria by himself, on the verge of being crushed by anxiety and loneliness. Lily had the same look in her eyes as he did then. If I'm wrong, then that's fine. But if I'm right, this time, I want to be the one to help. Belle said that he wanted to become someone like the goddess who saved him, to be like Hestia. He left it at that. That boy, Belle. He's the type of person who can pass on the kindness he receives to anyone. He recognizes pain that he has felt in others. Hestia had kept her eyes on the shelves in front of them while speaking. She once again looked up at Aina. He's really stubborn when he makes up his mind. No one can reason with him now. Aina looked as though she had been thrown for a loop. Hestia's shoulders dropped as she looked at the troubled expression on the half-elf's face. Aina's lips quivered as if she wanted to say something. Not convinced? No, that does sound like something Belle would say. But what's he basing it on? Hestia crossed her arm and let out a small hum as she looked at the unease written all over Aina's face. Hestia puffed out her cheeks as she chose her words. It felt strange even to say them out loud. About that. Belle has an extraordinary ability to read people. He's as good as we, the gods, are. Probably. Lily. A voice calling out to her cut through the swarm of monsters. Echoes of explosion after explosion of fire filled the room. The startled killer ants all tried to turn and face this sudden attack from behind but ran into one another as they moved. Flashes of fire reflected off Lily's eyes as they came closer, carving a path through the massive ants. The moment Lily clearly saw lightning flames, the wall of monsters collapsed and a white-haired boy jumped through. "Out of my way, ye!" Giga. The boy, Bell, dove toward Lily, wielding both his dagger and the short sword as he tore through the massive killer ants. The killer ant standing over the girl froze for a moment before its head was separated from its body in a flash. "Lily. You're okay, yes? Do you know who I am?" At first, Lily didn't recognize the boy embracing her. His ruby-red eyes were shaking as he held her. The fingers around her shoulder were clamped down so tight that it hurt. Belle quickly took out a potion and raised it to her lips. Lily's blank eyes looked as if she already had one foot in the grave. But her mouth opened just enough to allow the blue liquid to roll down her throat. Cough. Cough. A moment later, a cute little cough escaped her lungs. "Mr. Bell?" "Yes, it's me. You're okay, right?" Bell's voice cracked as he spoke, tears gushing from his eyes, like Lily's were, a moment ago, and a smile on his face. Heat filled Lily's body, which had been cold until now, as she was pulled into a strong and somewhat painful hug. Seeing that Lily was all right, Belle immediately looked up from her. The sharp claws of the surviving monsters were closing in. Lily's hand moved on its own underneath her shirt, where she had hidden a jet-black knife up until now. She pulled it up and held it out to Belle. Belle grinned from ear to ear as he took the Hestia knife from her. "Wait for a minute, just like usual." Saying those words, Belle stood up. Angry, clicking sounds reverberated around the room. Many spots on the floor were burning from Belle's magic, smoke rising into the air. There was no greater feeling of isolation than this. No less than 30 monsters had Belle and Lily surrounded. Even more were coming from the exits, born from the walls. All of them looked as though they could charge at any second. And yet, Belle wasn't afraid. The Belle of a few days ago would have faltered in the face of this many enemies for sure. Even now, Belle could never contend with this many monsters at once. However, now Belle had magic. "Here I come." He withdrew a vial filled with yellowish liquid from his leg holster. Belle now knew about the limits of the mind down and had purchased this 8,700 Val trump card to be ready to face death. Magic potion. Medicine that healed the mind. Popping the cap off the vial with his thumb, Belle downed it all in one gulp. "Right. HH." Another one of the ants stepped forward, and Belle raised his right arm. Firebolt. The killer ant was blasted backward the moment electric flames erupted from Belle's palm. That was the signal. All the ants charged at once. Belle started yelling over and over at the oncoming onslaught. Rapid-fire explosions of flame and electricity blanketed them all. Every time Belle shouted, a new jet of electrical inferno shot forward, illuminating the room. Every time his scarlet lightning was released, at least one killer ant was rent asunder. Some of his lucky shots slew 2 of the beasts at once. The army of killer ants took Belle's assault head-on, giving no ground. Magic was turning the tide of battle against overwhelming numbers. Ha! Belle reached for his weapons once a good portion of the killer ants had fallen. Gripping the Hestia knife in one hand and his dagger in the other, he charged headlong into the mass of wounded killer ants. Lily watched on in silence as flashes of purple light were followed by a severed head or torso flying into the air. She sat quietly in stunned silence, watching the scene unfold before her eyes. Whenever she caught a glimpse of his white hair, another killer ant was sliced down in a surge of purple liquid. He was fast, sharp, and strong. Before she knew it, Belle was the only one standing. There had been so many killer ants just a few minutes ago, now they were all motionless on the dungeon floor. Belle returned both blades to their sheaths with a look of relief on his face. He took one last look around the room before returning to Lily's side. "How did you get here?" she asked. "Well, orcs kept coming in after you left, but I think another adventurer came, probably. I couldn't see clearly because of the fog, but all the monsters between the exit and me suddenly weren't there anymore." That was how Belle had managed to do the impossible and cover that much ground to come straight here. Belle forced a smile, scratching the back of his head as though what he did was no big deal. However, Something inside Lily snapped when she saw that. Why? Eh? Did you say something, Lily? Why did you do it? The floodgates were open. Lily's mouth started moving on its own. There was something else she should be saying right now, but other words were spilling out. Why did you save Lily? Why didn't you just abandon Lily? What? There's no way you couldn't have realized by now Lily was fooling you. Does Mr. Bell think Lily wanted to surprise him by taking that knife, or something stupid like that? The confused look on Bell's face only served to make Lily's voice even more heated. Lily's sudden rage burned through the last wall of self-restraint. What are you, Mr. Bell? An idiot? A buffoon? An airheaded moron beyond all hope of recovery? Moron. Wait, Lily, calm down. Impossible. Mr. Bell doesn't notice anything. Lily took money for herself at the exchange. Mr. Bell's and Lily's shares should have been 50-50, but it was closer to 40-60. There were times Lily got greedy and made it 30-70. Lily charged you more than double the price of items when Lily prepared them. 12 of them. Lily doesn't know how many times Lily was shocked by your lack of knowledge about items, or how careless you are with equipment. Bell's mouth twitched as all this information suddenly came to light. Lily would not stop. A little voice in the back of her head was frantically saying stop. But it was no use. She kept on confessing to everything. Do you understand now? Lily is a bad person. A thief. Lily's a piece of shit prom who lied to you over and over. Lily's not worthy to be your supporter. You Even still, Mr. Bell saved Lily? Why yes. Why? Lily was gasping for breath as she looked at Bell. She had no clue what she was hoping to hear. But her heart was beating a mile a minute, faster than it should be even now. A little frightened by Lily's barrage, Bell opened his mouth to speak almost as a reflex and said these words. Be because you're a girl. Huh? Lily's entire body felt like it was on fire. Her fists clenched, her shoulders rose to her ears in anger. Her emotions were boiling over, and she had no idea why. She couldn't understand this explosion of discontent. Idiot. Mr. Bell is an idiot. Saying something like that again, it's the same as before? Would Mr. Bell save any woman just because? Lily can't believe this. You're horrible. Playboy. Pervert. Enemy of all women. For some reason, tears leaked out of Lily's eyes during her rant. She was in no position to be saying any of it, but she unloaded all of her discontent on the boy standing in front of her. Discontent? About what? He saved her. Just what did she have to be discontented about? What was this flame in her chest, no, her whole body, trying to say? She didn't have any idea. Bell withstood the latest tirade, Lily once again panting for breath. Relaxing his shoulders and smiling, Bell leaned forward and placed his hand gently on the cheek of the dog-earless Lily. Well then, because you're Lily. Chestnut eyes went as wide as they could go. I saved you because you're you, Lily. I didn't want you to disappear. Foo, eh? There's nothing else to it. Why would I need a better reason to save Lily? Her tear ducts gave out. A waterfall of tears gushed from her eyes, flowing down her face in all directions. Lily couldn't hold back any longer and cried out. Hick, wah. Lily, if you're in trouble, come talk to me. I'm an idiot, so I won't know unless you tell me. Hick, wah. I'll help you, you can count on it. Lily dove into his chest and hung on tight. His metallic armor got in the way, but she didn't care. She embraced him with all her might, her hands around his back. She could feel the palms of Bell's warm hands gently stroking her head and back over and over again. She knew. She noticed. Bell had thought of her when he rushed to this room. His light clothes were trashed, torn to shreds. The pale skin showing through the holes was covered in cuts and bruises. Lily knew that he had taken on hordes of monsters to come to her side. She wanted to call out to him, to say something to acknowledge what Bell had done. Lily wanted him to accept the one thing she hated most. Lily. Sorry, so sorry. It's okay. The sound of Lily's cries echoed far and wide. The scene of a giant ant massacre filled one corner of the dungeon. Slowly but surely, their magic stones broken one by one, The slain killer ants turned to ash amid smoke rising from still burning embers strewn about the room. The ashes slowly fell off the crying girl's face, along with her tears. The human kept the small prum girl in a tight embrace, the same calm smile on his face. The sky was clear. Just like on the day that someone called out to him, not a cloud in the sky. Bell walked toward Babel Tower, his white hair bathed in sunlight. 2 days had passed since then. He hadn't seen any trace of Lily since they broke up. The room she had used up to that point had been completely cleared out. She'd left no messages. There was no point going to Soma Familia for help. Lily had disappeared altogether. He felt worried and anxious. He didn't know how many times he had considered searching the city. But at the same time, Bell had a feeling. A feeling that he would see her again soon. It really was just a thought, but he kept to his usual routine. So he could be found easily. Exclamation mark. Bell stopped. And then started right back up again. He caught a glimpse of something at Babel's west gate, a small figure standing still, wearing a cream robe. The figure's hands were clasped around straps of a backpack while she looked at the ground. The figure's round, cute eyes were clearly visible between bangs in the sunlight. Bell set out toward the figure at a brisk walk. He didn't want to scare her or make her jump. The prum girl noticed him in no time. Her shoulders dropped to an almost pitiful level. She stood still as she watched him approach. They were close enough to shake hands, if only one of them would reach out. Lily looked up and opened her mouth to speak over and over again, but each time she couldn't get any words out. She couldn't start a conversation, it was very unlike her. Bell waited patiently for Lily to speak, but seeing her struggling with it, he flashed a quick smile before starting the conversation himself. Miss Supporter, are you looking for an adventurer? Huh? Lily looked up again. Bell's big grin reflected off Lily's round, chestnut-colored eyes. Are you confused? This is a pretty simple situation, you know. An adventurer in need of a supporter has come to you, asking to buy your services. Lily realized what was going on. Her eyes filled with tears of joy. Her cheeks turned a warm shade of pink. Bell shyly held out his right hand, as though he were embarrassed. I was wondering if you'd be willing to prowl the dungeon with me. Today was a fresh start. Bell and Lily really joined forces, their own two-person party. Their relationship had been reset. A new beginning. Yes. Please take Lily with you. With a smile as big as a sunflower, Lily took Bell's outstretched hand in her own. Epilogue. Backstage. He's gone, Ace quietly said to herself. She was on the 10th level floor. She stood alone in the fog, surrounded by the corpses of all the monsters she had slain. She had seen the boy through the fog not too long ago, but the moment he cleared the next set of oncoming monsters, he left the room as if he were shot out of a cannon. At Ana's request, she had collected information from other adventurers about the whereabouts of a white-haired boy, and she finally managed to track him down, only to have him run away from her once again. Her shoulders drooped. But Ace thought vaguely to herself that maybe he was used to his power. While she couldn't be sure because of the fog, she felt as though he was fighting with impatience, full of desperation. And when she cut an opening for him, he shot off like a madman driven by thoughts of something that wasn't her. Ace got the impression that the boy had a reason to rush, but she didn't know why. What should I do now? She had accepted Ana's request to confirm the boy's safety. She should go after him. However, going after him now would be another wild goose chase. She was considering her options when suddenly something glinted through the fog. What? She bent down to pick up the source of the light from the grass. It was an emerald-colored vambrace. The vambrace, the exact color of Riveria's and Ana's eyes, was somewhat the worse for wear. It looked as though it had taken a bad hit or three before falling off, and the surface was covered in nicks, scratches, and cuts. But why here? She wondered to herself before it came to her. An important thought occurred to her. Could this be? Behind her, a lost needle rabbit hopped around the prairie field on the 10th level floor of the dungeon. Little Barista. Made by Govenu Familia. Designed for shorter races like prums. Has power beyond its size. The ammo is light, with little to no recoil. However, range is limited. Different arrows can provide more power and range. Sold separately. Afterward. This is the second book in the series. Thank you for picking it up. This is Fujino Amori. While this story has a fantasy world type feel, I was very conscious of building the story like a video game. My greatest challenge was figuring out how to incorporate an experience point system, the most basic role-playing game element, into the story in a way that readers could accept without any misunderstandings. I spent many long hours trying to solve this problem. This book casts the spotlight on baggage-carrying supporters, a job that came to mind while working on the first problem. Since there are no magic pockets that adventurers can put as much as they want into, how are they going to take all their loot out of the dungeon? Could they fight at full strength while lugging around large bags? If not, then who would carry the load? This is how the supporter role came to be. As you have read, being a supporter is not a glamorous job by any means. Their position is so low that they have to be content to sip muddy water. It's not surprising that the heroine of this story, and others like her, wasn't satisfied and went astray. Yes, for sure. However, not just in terms of this story, but I think life itself is easier when someone is there to help shoulder the load. It's only when we have people there to help us that we can face new challenges. I don't want to be thought of as someone who got too caught up in the moment and forgot to express gratitude to those who helped me along the way. Writing this book reminded me of that fact. So I would like to take this opportunity to do just that. First, to my editor who supported me again and again. To Mr. Suzuhito Yasuda, who overcame a very difficult schedule to provide amazing artwork. And to everyone who put their heart and soul into making this book a reality, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thanks to overwhelming support from readers, a third book is now in the works. I'm working as hard as I can to get it on the shelves as soon as possible. Thank you all for your continued support. That's all for now. Fujino Amori. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Volume 2. No Amori. Prologue. Alea Yokta Est. Otar. The boy has gotten stronger. Is that desirable, Mom? Why, yes. The room was dark. The weak light of dusk filtered in from outside the window. The corners of Freya's lips curled upward in the flickering light from a single magic stone lamp sitting on a table. This was the top floor of Babel Tower, built directly above the dungeon itself. There were few furnishings in the room. While that might not have seemed suitable for the highest class suite in the tower, each individual piece of furniture was beyond lavish. Likewise, every item was placed perfectly within the space to complement everything else. The decor included a massive bookcase, a bed so big that a normal mind could never have thought of it, and a stylish, dark red carpet. Framing the interior were large murals of the sun and moon. There, the silver-haired goddess Freya held a wine glass in her hand as she enjoyed a conversation with one of her followers. I misjudged him. This isn't simply about status. Just by obtaining magic, the boy's soul now shines even brighter. To my eyes, it looks as if he has been polished. She held her wine glass up in the cold moonbeam, gazing at the light as it reflected off the lazily sloshing liquid. The young white wine was crystal clear with no depth. And no flavor either, of course. But Freya smiled with her silver eyes as she brought the glass to her lips, almost as though she considered that pale color itself to be prized above all else. His soul's growth, is it so remarkable? Perhaps so. I wonder, she replied to the stone-faced Otar as he stood quietly in the corner of the room. He stood at attention, his eyes on his goddess. Her silver eyes meeting his rust-colored gaze, Freya slowly and deliberately lowered her eyelids. However, there is something, just one thing keeping him from shining through. It's holding him back, like shackles on his soul. Yes, he has enough spirit to shine. Be that as it may, he lacks a strong core. No, he has a good core, but it looks clouded to me, as though something is missing, or blocking it. Any ideas, Otar? Asked Freya over her shoulder, seeking his opinion, as though needing the perspective of another male. The male animal person, built like a boulder, opened his lips to answer his mistress. Perhaps his attachments. His attachments. Yes, it is as you have said, Mistress Freya, the boy's attachments, his connection with the Minotaur. He may not even be aware of it himself, but some part of his past has become a thorn, constantly tormenting him from within. Otar knew of Belle's encounter with the Minotaur in the dungeon. While Freya herself didn't exactly hear the story from Belle's mouth, she had gotten enough information to put the story together. It wasn't much more than a guess, but she was fairly certain that Belle, with that weak body of his, had indeed lost to a Minotaur. Freya ran a curled finger down the side of her cheek, down to her chin. He has some trauma, then. The children really are delicate. We may have a few attachments, but gods are not held back by the past. Very interesting. On the other hand, perhaps you see us as merely whimsical? Don't be absurd. If you'd humor me every once in a while, I wouldn't be so bored. Otar's face remained unchanged. Ah, well. Freya muttered to herself as she cast her gaze back out the window and onto Belle. So tell me, what can we do to free him from these restraints? Freya narrowed her eyes as she glanced back at her servant and challenged him with a question. A person can only break free from the chains of their past by their own hands. There is no other way. The ever-stoic Otar responded directly to his goddess's question. Is that from personal experience? I believe that men are doomed to repeat their own mistakes. Freya laughed quietly to herself before breaking eye contact. A cause for concern had just come to light. Freya's good mood carried her deep into thought. If the shadow of this Minotaur monster is the cause, then the answer is simple. I don't have to do anything, save wait. That boy will grow stronger still and climb over that wall. With enough time, Belle would become strong enough to defeat a Minotaur. All he had to do was escape from the past that still had him by the tail. There was no problem to solve. And the moment he slays the Minotaur, he will shine brighter than ever before. Once that happened, he would appear before her like a flower in full bloom, one radiant enough to make her fall for him all over again. She couldn't wait, she admitted to herself. Belle was at the center of her universe now. He had become more appealing to Freya than anything else. She wanted him, very much. She wanted him to always be close enough to reach out and touch. Once her thoughts came to his point, Freya asked Otar another question. Otar. What is it, Mom? Do you not feel anything? I am becoming entranced with that boy, ignoring all of you already in my familia. Otar's face remained unchanged as Freya continued. What would you do if that boy becomes stronger than you? I might treasure him more than you. That place you are standing now might become his. As your heart desires, Mistress Freya. You wouldn't be jealous? Otar responded with utmost sincerity and trust, without betraying any emotion as he spoke. Your love is fair to all. While some may be special, no one is above the rest. Even if you were to dismiss me from this post, I wholeheartedly believe that your love for me will not disappear. Silver eyes locked with rusty ones. In the uncomfortable silence that followed, Otar bent his gargantuan body forward and silently lowered his head. I have said too much. I don't mind. In fact, quite the opposite. You have become dearer to me. Your words bring me great joy. They casually traded words as though they were so many blows. Freya let out a conniving laugh as she spun her beautiful voice into her response. But it's a shame. You are always so rigid. I would have loved to see you green with envy. If that is what you desire. Ha. Hee hee. Ha ha ha. Would you please, Otar? Please don't make me laugh. If I saw your serious face burn with jealousy, I don't think I could contain myself. Freya laughed, seemingly finding the notion truly amusing. She placed the palm of one hand over her mouth and hugged her waist with the other, as though she were a young girl trying to contain herself. As for Otar, seeing his goddess like this finally got a reaction out of him, a small twitch of an ear. One of the cat-like ears on the top of his head suddenly pointed in a strange direction. Once Freya had gotten her fill of laughter, she wiped her eyes and turned to face her very embarrassed subordinate to change the subject. So Otar, what do you think? How do you mean? About the boy. Am I worried over nothing? Otar immediately repaired his posture. He will soon become powerful enough to resist me. Powerful enough to break free from these attachments you spoke of. But, part of me is worried if that is well enough. I can't explain it in words. Eventually, it's just a matter of time. Before I know it, all of those phrases keep going through my head, and I feel, somehow, timid. I know it's not true, but I feel like I'm in the wrong." Freya whispered under her breath, "Perhaps I'm overthinking it." It was all she could do to muse, vaguely, that nothing was wrong, and that she had done nothing wrong. There were no particularly strong grounds for this. But Freya had watched many talented children grow in her familia, and all of them had grown strong given enough time. Surely this boy would follow the same pattern. At this moment, Otar squinted his eyes for the first time. "Otar, do you think time will solve this problem, too?" "Yes, indisputably. Given enough time, it will happen. It's just..." Otar let his words hang for a moment before speaking with full confidence. "Those who do not go on adventures will never break out of their shell. That is a fact." He fell silent. His true feelings had been revealed. Somewhere else in Arario, there was a half-elf with the opposite opinion. These, though, were the words of a man who had survived many close calls, a mature adult who had been forged in the flames of battle. He clearly stated that those who don't go on adventures would never rise past a certain level. Otar had pointed out the possibilities of an unknown that even Freya couldn't see. Indeed, it wasn't Freya, but Otar who saw what the boy could become. "I leave his development in your hands, Otar." The goddess of beauty set the glass of white wine down. Closing both eyes, it was as if she had turned her back on him. It was only then that Otar couldn't hide a hint of suspicion on his face. "And what caused this change in the wind? Is it obvious? You now understand the boy better than I do." Freya's head was down, her voice sounding like that of a pouting child. She then raised her head, laughing in a very glamorous fashion. "Enough to make me jealous." Chapter 1. The Kinky Approaches. The sun was shining down from directly overhead. Its light brightened the main street north of Babel Tower. Very few adventurers came up this way. Civilians filled the street as well as a certain open cafe. The seats were occupied by people laughing and enjoying the warmth of the midday sun. Belle and Lily sat across from each other at a table surrounded by the parasols of the many patrons enjoying their lunch outside. "So, you're done with Soma Familia?" "Yes. Because Lily has no doubt that they think she's dead." A day had passed since Belle and Lily made their party anew. Belle wanted to know about Lily's current situation, and was listening to her explanation. Since Lily is dead, there is no reason for her to continue being involved in Soma Familia. At the same time, Soma Familia won't come looking for her. Why would they? Lily's gone, after all. Lily continued, explaining that they shouldn't cause a problem for Belle, either. Belle's brow darkened slightly as he took in Lily's face, her clear eyes and charming features now clearly visible thanks to the disappearance of her bangs, which vanished upon her transformation. "Don't worry about me, anyway. Are you sure you're okay with being labeled as dead?" "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Bell. But it's better to cut them off. Lily doesn't have anyone to rely on over there anyway, and as you know, Mr. Bell, Lily is satisfied with that." Lily was speaking from her heart. Bella understood, and decided not to push any further on this topic. He didn't want to reopen any of the girl's wounds, so he considered the matter resolved. "I'll take you at your word, Lily. But I wonder if Soma Familia will find out? That you're alive, I mean." Lily can't guarantee that they won't, but she's spent the past 2 days erasing any trail that could lead to her. There isn't any need to worry. Plus, Lily has this. Lily lightly placed her hands on her head with a small thud and rubbed her hair. Her usual chestnut-colored hair shifted to a dark brown as cat ears popped out of her head just behind her hands. Her eyes had become a golden brown. Cinderella. Thanks to this magic, Lily always had an ace up her sleeve. No matter how anyone looked at the girl now, they would see an animal people child. While the shape of Lily's face was mostly unchanged, she looked nothing like the prom she really was. As long as this ace was a secret, the chances that anyone else would be able to realize this girl was Lily Lucarda were 1 in a million. Bell himself had been shocked when he found out about Lily's magic. So then? Yes, there's no problem. Even if someone found out, they would never be able to make trouble for you, Mr. Bell. Bell grimaced and nodded, not worried about his own safety. Yet at the same time, he did feel relieved. With things how they were, there was almost no way that Lily would get caught up in another dangerous situation. And even if she were, Belle would be able to help. Truth be told, Belle felt angry and sad after hearing what Lily had to say, angry at those who would treat others as if they weren't people, and sad that those who did would go unpunished. However, thinking about it from Lily's position, she shouldn't be involved with Soma Famula at all. To do so now would be like calling a pack of wolves onto both Lily and Belle. As long as Lily was safe, nothing else mattered. Belle forced his own misgivings out of his mind as he arrived at that conclusion. They'd already buried the hatchet. While it wasn't completely gone, the distance between Belle and Lily had almost disappeared. They were comfortable enough with each other now to reach out and shake hands. It's a blank slate from today, Belle thought as a smile emerged on his lips. Mr. Bell. Eh? What is it? Is this really okay with you, Mr. Bell? Huh? Is it okay to forgive Lily like this? At that moment, Lily's expression was the exact opposite of Belle's, dark and dispirited. She looked up at Belle with the eyes of a criminal begging for forgiveness. Lily tricked Mr. Bell. She took advantage of Mr. Bell's kindness and betrayed him. And there's no way to return what Lily stole. If she's forgiven like this, Lily'll. This was the reason the two couldn't get much closer than a handshake. Lily felt horrible. Guilt hung over her head. She craved redemption. She was tormented by the things she had done in her past. Belle had lost count of how many times she had apologized. Lily had lost everything, due to recent events. All of the money and items she carried with her, as well as her life savings of gnome jewels, had been stolen from her by a former ally in Soma Familia. The knowledge that she had absolutely nothing to give Belle to help make up for what she had taken from him was driving her mad. No matter how many times Belle told her not to worry about it, rather than cheering up, she looked more and more depressed. It was like she wanted some kind of punishment, something more than just a slap on the wrist. But I'm not asking for anything like that. Belle's face contorted as if he'd just lost an argument. He looked back over the table at Lily. He wasn't good at this kind of thing, not just deciding punishment, but even looking down on someone from a moral high ground made Belle uncomfortable. Up until now, his situation had always been the opposite. Belle racked his brain, trying to find some way to help alleviate Lily's feelings of guilt, when reinforcements arrived. Belle. Asked, Goddess. Belle stood up as the voice of a young girl called his name. Just as he expected, the goddess Hestia had arrived at the cafe. Hestia wasn't very tall. In fact, she wasn't all that much different from Lily in terms of height. The goddess wove through the vibrant crowd of customers and made her way to Belle and Lily's table. Sorry to keep you waiting. Have you been here long? No, not at all. I'm the one who should apologize. You had to take time off from your job to come here. Nothing to worry about. So then, this is the girl? Yes. She's the one I told you about. Lily Luca. Nice to meet you. Lily jumped off the chair and made a quick bow. The two of them had come to the cafe today at Hestia's request. Her intentions were clear. She wanted to see with her own eyes the supporter working with the only member of her familia. If Lily didn't receive Hestia's permission, their newly reformed party could be disbanded before it even got started. Knowing that was a very real possibility, Lily couldn't hide her nervousness as she looked up to face the goddess. Sensing the tension, a small "ah" escaped Belle's lips as if he suddenly remembered something important. Oh no. I forgot to get a chair for you, goddess. What? It's nothing to worry about. With this many people, I doubt there's a spare chair anyway. Go ahead and have a seat, Belle. I'll sit on your knee. Ha ha ha, you sure like joking around like that, don't you, goddess? Just wait here for a minute. I'll go find someone and get another chair ready. He left with a big smile on his face. It was the innocent smile of a child who knew nothing of plots and schemes. Hestia turned and watched him leave, standing still for a moment before her twin black ponytails sunk like the tail of a sad puppy. Lily looked on in confusion at the dark cloud of sadness hovering over Hestia. What luck. I wanted to find a way to get him to go away for a moment anyway. It's no big deal. Why yes. Hestia vacant chair, her face pouty and a bit red. Lily followed suit and sat down. Well, let's get right to it. Never know when he'll be back. No need for introductions, right? I'm sure Belle told you who I am. Why yes. It would still be a few more minutes before Lily realized in what direction Hestia was driving the conversation. While Lily was a young prom girl, her youthful look and innocence were nothing compared to Hestia's. The goddess seemed to exist right on the border between fetching girl and lovely young lady. But that uncertainty somehow only accentuated her beautiful, fine features. She was part mischievous troublemaker, but also refined, both elements seemingly intertwined within her. Sunlight that managed to find its way between the parasols struck Hestia's jet-black ponytails, making them glitter around her. "I'll ask you up front. Supporter, are you still trying to run any scams?" Lily was taken aback by the too direct question. Hestia didn't even blink as she stared across the table. Despite her looks, Hestia possessed a dignity befitting a goddess. Lily suddenly realized she was being tested. Hestia had seen right through her. As proof, Hestia had not said Lily's name even once up to this point. However, after all that Lily had done to Belle, it was only natural that the goddess saw her as an untrustworthy prom. In response, Lily spoke earnestly from her heart. "Absolutely not. Lily was saved by Mr. Bell. Lily doesn't want to do anything that could hurt or betray him anymore." Their eyes met, both unblinking. Neither looked away. The background noises of the street and the cafe seemed distant. No one can lie to a god. While she had heard the words before, it was not until that moment that Lily realized how true they were. Hestia could see right through her. The gods and goddesses had the power to detect any lie here in the earthly world of Gekkai, if they felt like it. Okay. I'll believe those words." Hestia's words put a merciful end to an extremely long minute for Lily. All of the air that had built up in Lily's lungs was suddenly released as the muscles in her shoulders relaxed. "Supporter, Bell is a very special person to me. He's my pride and joy, the center of my world. My first member, my first family. I can tell you honestly that I don't want to lose him." Hestia paused for a moment, inhaling, and then continued. "Bell has told me a lot about you, including your motivations for stealing. I have no intention of giving you any cheap sympathy. In fact, that would be impossible. So, I have nothing to say on the subject, however." She let the word hang to let Lily know that this was the important part. As she opened her mouth to speak again, Hestia's eyes blocked out everything except for the girl. "If you should do something, anything, that puts that boy in a dangerous situation again, I will make you pay." Lily couldn't move. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. A very important fact had slipped her mind. While the girl in front of her didn't look much different from anyone else around them, she was from a completely different world. She was a goddess. It was so obvious that Hestia had the power, like all deities from Deustia, to turn this entire city to ash in an instant, that Lily had forgotten it. Under a blue gaze so cold it sent icicles through her heart, Lily drew power from her true feelings to make a response. It took all of her might to open her mouth to speak. "Lily swears to you. She will never do anything to put Mr. Bell in danger, Lady Hestia in danger, or even Lily herself, ever again." Other cafe patrons continued their casual conversations with no idea what was unfolding behind them. The two of them sat there in silence for some time before Hestia closed her eyes, signaling the end of that conversation. Blinking several times, Hestia mouthed, "Okay" to the girl. Seeing that broke the ice that had kept Lily's body rigid, and she went limp. She was about to fall face first into the table but managed to catch herself at the last moment. After delivering her warning, Hestia crossed her arms in front of her incredibly bulbous chest and eyed Lily silently. She started sulking. Lily noticed the heavy aura emanating from the goddess and did everything she could to make her body smaller. "Supporter, I'll be honest with you." "Why yes?" "I hate you. I don't want you anywhere near Belle!" Exclamation mark. Lily's eyes shot open as Hestia continued. "It should be obvious. I knew you were bad news from the moment I first heard about you, taking advantage of Belle's kindness and doing whatever you please. Even now, you're trying to gain favor by acting like you've already paid your dues. What's your scheme, you deceiving vixen?" The cat ears on top of Lily's head from her Cinderella magic began to shake. The prom then broke out in a cold sweat, confused by Hestia's choice of words. "Besides, what's with you? You've been making that downcast face ever since I sat down. I'm getting depressed just looking at you." It was like she was claiming Lily's very presence made the food taste bad. The goddess kept going, pouting like a toddler. "I'll bet you were thinking about Belle, weren't you?" Exclamation mark. "How did I know, you ask?" "Because I saw a look on your face that I only see when I look in the mirror. Ah, I hate this. I don't want you spending time with Belle." Terrible waves of dread began to run up Hestia's back. The other patrons had noticed something was going on, their eyes on the two girls but inching away. Lily looked like she was going to cry. "Being saved by Belle made you turn over a new leaf, huh? Did you stop to think that you're just going to cause him more trouble because he's too kind for his own good? Question mark. He won't do anything to you for revenge, so you're feeling the crushing weight of guilt on your shoulders. But if I may say so, you're just taking advantage of him. I really, really hate you." Hestia's words were blades, cutting deeper and deeper. Hestia's eyes locked squarely on the prum. Lily couldn't make a sound. "Fine, then. I'll punish you in Belle's place. But just so you know, you have no right to refuse. I'll give a pure judgment right here and now." Air shot out Hestia's nose in a flow of anger. A dazzled Lily could do nothing more than nod. There might even have been a part of her that accepted the words of Belle's goddess and wanted to go along with them. Lily waited for Hestia's mouth to open again, every nerve in her body about to explode. As for Hestia, she was grinding her teeth together, menacingly towering over Lily, until words failed her. Hestia let out a deep sigh. "Please, look after Belle." "Eh? TCH. Hestia almost spat the sound in Lily's direction. "Let me just say this, I'm not doing it for you. After hearing him talk about you, I'm worried about Belle. You could say my fears were confirmed. He's easily tricked. So I ask you, make sure he doesn't get fooled by some stranger. You must guard him." Lily sat there in shock. She gathered her thoughts, trying to respond, but nothing came out of her mouth. Hestia's gaze didn't allow it. "You know, I'm not doing something cheeky like passing judgment on you, right? We deities don't do that nowadays. The reason you feel guilty is because you won't forgive yourself." Hestia intensified her glare, as if to say don't go to Belle looking for forgiveness. "If you want to pay him back, help him until he's satisfied. It's obvious. You know that thing called sincerity? And finishing what you start. If you really have changed, then prove it with your actions." Hestia's torrent of words finally came to an end. Hestia may have been harsh, but Lily could sense the goddess's true colors. The goddess Hestia had given her a chance. She was merciful. She was generous and noble at the same time. Everything up to that point had been her personal feelings. But despite all that, she decided to allow Lily to be Belle's supporter. She would extend mercy to anyone. She was a protector of those in need. Thankful for her sudden warmth, Lily silently looked up at Hestia before giving her a deep bow of her head. The aura between the two girls had become as tranquil as a lagoon hidden deep within a forest. "Sorry to keep you waiting. I grant you my blessing to work with him. Please be sure to protect him. Just don't do anything more than that." "What?" Hestia's sudden warning broke the tranquility. Lily's eyes opened in disbelief. Before she could ask her what she meant by that, Belle set a chair down at that table. The moment he opened his mouth to apologize yet again, Hestia quickly reached out, snagged his arm, and pulled it into her. "Ask, goddess? Shall we reintroduce ourselves? Nice to meet you, supporter. Looks like you're going to be helping my Belle out a lot in the near future." Hestia put a little too much emphasis on my. Her aura had changed once again. Now she was like a tigress protecting her territory. Her cold stare from before had become a line of fire, as if to say hands off or I'll tear you apart. Lily flinched away, her cheek twitching at Hestia's maneuvering. She was a goddess. Generous and righteous, Hestia was worthy of worship and praise. But she was also a child. Or rather, a rival. She was pulling Belle's arm up against her, purposefully creating a barrier in front of him. A spark of anger flashed in the back of Lily's mind. They had come to a point of peace just a moment ago, but this was different. Whoosh! Lily reached out with both hands and grabbed a hold of Belle's other arm. Lily faced down Hestia's burning glare of death with her own defiant gaze. "No, no, the pleasure's all Lily's. Belle has always been so terribly kind to Lily, after all. A young prom on one side, a young goddess on the other. They might have looked like cute little girls on the outside, but they stared each other down with the faces of fully grown women. Not even tall enough for their legs to touch the ground sitting in their chairs, the two young ladies glared knives at one another. Gee goddess? Belle's arm was being pressed into Hestia's rather extensive cleavage and he was starting to panic. He had no idea what was taking place just under his chin. In the battle of the two ladies, the goddess had claimed the first point. Drat. Just like a goddess, so those things aren't just for show. Did you say something, supporter?
Lily.
What are you planning to do next? After the smoke have cleared, Belle struck up a conversation. Everyone had calmed down to the point that they were sitting peacefully in their chairs. Lily's eyes, currently a golden brown hue, looked at Belle in confusion. You don't exactly have a home to go back to right now, do you, Lily?
No, I don't.
That was true before, too, but Lily's staying at cheap motels. Lily flashed a nervous smile as Belle turned his attention to Hestia. Although Hestia's lip twitched ever so slightly, she made eye contact and gave a big nod. Lily, if it's okay with you, why don't you stay with us at our home?
What I'm trying to say is,
do you want to join Hestia Familia? It's just me and the goddess right now. Of course Belle knew that Lily was already a member of Soma Familia, but he also knew that she had no connection with them anymore. That's why he thought he'd make the offer. Rather than leave her out on the streets, why not invite her to join them? It was something that Belle himself wanted, too. Hestia showed little reaction, and all that was left was for Lily to agree. Lady Hestia, is that okay? You don't hate Lily? He, don't get the wrong idea. No matter how much I don't like you, ignoring a child in your situation goes against my principles. I came here today knowing that I might end up hosting you until you find your next job. Hestia's cheeks were turning red as she braced every muscle in her head to squeeze out those words with a straight face. Her obvious lie made Belle grimace uncomfortably. Lily chuckled at the two of them before taking a deep breath and slowly shaking her head.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, Lady Hestia. But the thought alone is enough for Lily.
Why? Lily would feel bad for taking advantage of your kindness again, and Lily is still a member of Soma Familia. Laughing at Belle's stunned reaction, Lily reached around her back from over her shoulder. Even Hestia squinted her eyes, thinking about the status engraved at the tips of Lily's fingers. As a member of Soma Familia, Lily isn't allowed to go to Mr. Bell and Lady Hestia's home. If the fact that Lily was staying there were found out, it would cause trouble for both of you. Lily couldn't forgive herself if that happened.
I'm not worried about that, oh.
Bell was just about to take a bite out of his lunch when he suddenly realized something important and froze. This was no longer just his problem. His family would be in danger as well. Bell closed his eyes as though a sudden headache had struck him. Forcing his eyelids half open, he looked over at Hestia. Supporter, what are the conditions for leaving Soma Familia? Is it forbidden altogether? What did your god say about it? Soma has never said anything directly, but most likely, Lily thinks it involves a large amount of money. Money, huh? Besides members, the main thing that Hestia Familia lacked was money. Thanks to Belle's efforts in the dungeon, the two of them were much better off now than they had been a month ago, but they still had to save as much as possible. The most money they could hope to offer at this point would be around 10,000 vals. And even if by some miracle Belle and Hestia were able to raise enough money to pay for Lily's release, there was no way that Lily would be willing to accept it. Is it that difficult to break away from a familia? I know someone who has. It's up to the god. Some will listen to that kind of request, others won't. The risk of leaving a familia was all on the person leaving. It was also hazardous to the familia itself. The biggest risk was, of course, information being leaked. No matter how dissolute the god or goddess was, this level of familia management needed to be handled very delicately. Generally speaking, deities prefer to avoid their members leaving the group. The person you're talking about might have circumstances that they can't discuss. Hestia spoke to Belle after a quick glance at Lily. Both Belle and the Prem understood what she was getting at. Lily still belonged to the same familia, but at the same time was separate. She was no different from a street cat, a stray adventurer. As for the person who had received permission to leave their familia, Mamma Mia, the owner of the benevolent mistress, Belle had a feeling that Hestia was right. Considering a few things that Sir Flubber and the others had let slip in conversation, it's very possible Mia might have some special circumstances. Even without asking directly, Belle was getting a good sense of just how difficult life was for people who left their familia. What about people who didn't choose to be a part of the familia? They don't have a say in it? A child is part of the family. Farmers' children become farmers. That's how it is, Mr. Bell. If a child's parents were already members of a familia, that child was destined to join, whether they liked it or not. Looking at it from the gods' or goddesses' perspective, the child was the parents' responsibility. It wasn't as though the god had asked to have a crying baby in their home, so they weren't likely to take care of it. To be blunt, it wasn't the god's concern. In the end, permission to leave a familia came down to the god's disposition. Did they have a generous streak, or not? Because if the member was unlucky, they could be asked for an unreasonably large sum of money, or be given an impossible task to complete as their god watched from a distance, enjoying the show. Bell looked over at the smiling Lily with concern in his eyes. Without Soma's assistance, you can't update your status, and I suppose you can't covet. Probably not. But you're not planning to stay at this level forever, right? Are you planning to pay him a visit at some point? Yes. Lily knows it's not an option right now, but Lily will go to Soma when the time is right. Lily's not sure if he'll listen to her, though. With Lily's words, the conversation came to a sudden end. The three of them sat in their chairs, deep in thought. Amid this thick but delicate silence, Bell raised his head to ask Lily a question. Well then, what are you going to do, Lily? Stay by yourself in some room again? Actually, there is an old gnome that knows Lily well, not Lily, but close enough. Anyway, he should be willing to give Lily a hand. Lily's planning to stay at his shop for the time being. Ah, of course she'll be working. She'll do her best not to use her magic and to do honest work. Belle heard no waver in her voice. The knowledge that Lily had a plan in mind made him feel a little better. I think I should talk to Aina again. It was difficult to think about, but Belle couldn't see any way for the Soma Familia situation to be solved without Aina Tule's help. It was the guild's policy not to get involved with problems concerning familias unless something major was taking place. As the organization that makes Arario tick, the guild didn't have time to worry about the misfortune of individual adventurers and supporters. Their role of support only involved teaching the adventurers and supporters ways to harvest magic stones more effectively. They didn't typically listen to personal issues. Bell held his temple with one hand as he realized he had been spoiled by Aina's kindness. Hey, are you sure it's all right, forcing yourself on some poor old guy like that? I could introduce you to the manager at my job, you know, said Hestia. No. Lily doesn't want to be around when someone forgets how to use a magic stone stove and blows the whole stand sky high. Thanks for the offer, but Lily politely refuses. How do you know about that? Stories about the lowly goddess's curse and the disaster on North Main are quite famous in this neighborhood, so. Eek. Not in front of Beel. MMMPH? At any rate, thought Belle, as long as they're willing to put up with my white-haired head, I'll bow to the girls laughing in front of me any day. Finally seeing honest laughter coming from Lily for the first time was infectious, and he broke into a smile himself. I make my way at a brisk pace down Northwest Main, Adventurer's Way. I've said goodbye to the goddess and Lily, and am en route to the guild headquarters. I can't shake the feeling that I need to at least let Aina know about Soma Familia, and other details of the conversation we just had. The shops lining the street are already open, every one of them busy and lively. Since adventurers travel this street daily, the shops in this area do their best to stand out with their building design. That accessory shop over there has a waterfall of ale running down the sides of the entrance for decoration, and the item shop next to it is built from ash-colored bricks that look solid as iron. Every shop window has its highest quality items lined up and on display. I wonder if most adventurers are taking the day off, as there are a ton of tough-looking demi-humans in street clothes out shopping right now. Most of them are in small groups, like they're in the same party, milling around together as they chatter about this and that topic, laughing often. That would be so nice. Always being with a group of friends who know you better than anyone else, fighting for each other, even shopping together. Honestly, I'm a little jealous.
There it is.
A massive temple on the side of the road, a pantheon. I walk through the front garden and between the white marble pillars of the guild headquarters. It's just past noon, and most adventurers are in the dungeon by now, so the lobby is mostly empty. The sheer whiteness of the massive hall really stands out when almost no one is here. Without the usual crowd of fellow adventurers blocking my vision, I find Aina almost instantly. She's got a customer at her window. A single adventurer, standing across the counter from Aina, is holding something wrapped in a white cloth. Aina's nodding. She looks troubled somehow, like they're talking about something serious. I'm so focused on Aina's expression that I don't even glance at the adventurer, whose back is to me as I carefully walk up to the counter for a closer look. But out of the corner of my eye, I notice the long blonde hair and sleek, feminine features. Aina notices my presence when I'm just a few meters away. Her emerald green eyes shoot open in surprise. That starts a chain reaction. The person at the counter slowly turns to face me. Wah! From beneath swaying golden locks appear two golden eyes. A soft, rounded chin, and thin neck. Even if I hadn't noticed her milky white, smooth skin, she would have still struck me as beautiful. There's a slight look of surprise, seeing me standing here, on a face so gorgeous that it's on par with the goddesses themselves. Mrs. Wallenstein. I forget to breathe as the three of us just stand there, a triangle of surprised silence. My gaze is locked firmly with Ace's, but I can see Aina's eyes jumping back and forth between us as well. Now I can't breathe at all. All I can see are those golden eyes, my mind completely blank. The silence continues. Keeping my face unchanged, I force my right leg backward and slowly turn my body away from her. The moment I hear one of them say, "Huh?" I make a break for the door. Every fiber of my being wants out, now. Bell. Wait. I ignore Aina's voice echoing after me, just running, running, running. My feet pound on the white marble floor, my arms pumping so hard that my shirt might catch fire. Almost out the door. Why the heck would Aina be talking to her? What the hell is going on? This can't be good. I shake my head to get all the images of bad things that might happen to me out of my mind. My inside ears burning red as I put on speed. Breaking through the confusion outside the front door, I blaze through the front garden and dash toward the safety of the crowded street. But at that moment, I feel a sudden burst of wind from behind me. Suddenly, she's standing between me and the street, her blonde hair flowing in the breeze she created when she ran past me. Duh. I see her, but I'm going full speed. There's no way I can avoid slamming right into her, and I watch every horrifying second of it in slow motion through my wide-open eyes. Belle? Miss Wallenstein? I clench my eyes tight just before impact, but I can hear Aina's footsteps as she comes out of the guild. Wait, where's the impact? I carefully open my eyes only to see a thin arm wrapped around my stomach. Another is supporting my back. She is holding me. I look up a little higher. She's looking down on me, her eyebrows low. Sorry. Are you okay? I'm sorry. My face bright red, I practically jump out of her arms. I take a moment to collect myself, and the sudden jolt of seeing her starts to fade away. It seemed that I'd been held. What do you think you're doing? Running off like that when someone is trying to talk to you is very rude, I'll have you know. I'm sorry, Miss Aina. I apologize to a very angry Aina out of reflex, but my eyes are drawn to Miss Wallenstein. The moment her gaze meets mine, I quickly look away and ask Aina a question. So what is all this? Why are you, and you? Miss Wallenstein wanted to talk with you, Belle. Huh? Aina heaves a sigh at my total lack of understanding, and tells me nothing more. My eyes snap back to Miss Wallenstein as she takes the white cloth off the thing she's holding. An emerald green vambrace emerges. I don't think my eyes have ever opened wider than they do at that moment. She found this in the dungeon and wanted to give it back to you personally. She came to me to ask to set up a meeting with you. She speaks with a matter-of-fact tone, like it should have been obvious. As for me, I'm still in shock. 3 days ago, I fought against wave after wave of monsters on the 10th level of the dungeon. It got knocked off my arm in the chaos, but I'd been so focused on catching up to Lily that I didn't take the time to retrieve it. That's when it hits me. The mysterious adventurer who cleared a path for me, protected me, was her.
Belle.
I'll leave the two of you alone to talk. Huh? My shoulders spin violently in Aina's direction as soon as her words hit my ears. Screaming silently under my breath, I make one last plea to her. Wait,
Miss Aina.
I'm begging you, please stay here with me.
I'm dying here. You're a young man, aren't you?
There are many things that need to be said, so man up and say them, all right? She gives me a quick nod and mouths, good luck. Aina is probably just trying to be nice and give us some privacy, but the thought of being alone with her is enough to make me cry. Aina turns on her heel and goes back into the guild. Suddenly I understand how a puppy feels as it's abandoned in a box by the side of the road and watches its master get smaller in the distance.
Here.
Exclamation mark. Hearing her voice makes me spin around and take the vambrace from Miss Wallenstein in one movement. She's almost my height, barely tall enough to look me in the eyes. And she's staring right at me. My whole body has to be red by this point. My mouth is shut tight.
I apologize.
Huh? It was my fault that Minotaur wasn't slain, and caused you so much trouble and injury. I have been hoping for a chance to apologize since then. I am very sorry. I can't believe my ears or my eyes, as she lowers her head in a light bow. Getting a grip on the situation, I force my mouth open and drive the words out. No. It was all my fault for going down to the 5th level in the first place.
You've done nothing wrong, Miss Wallenstein.
Actually, you're my savior. I'm the one who should be apologizing to you. I'm the idiot who turned cocky and got run around in circles. Sorry. Shaking from head to toe, everything that I have to say suddenly comes spilling out of my mouth at once. After all that I've been through, every time she's saved my life, to have her apologize to me makes me want to disappear off the face of the earth out of embarrassment. Well, what I'm trying to say. I think my face is going to melt from how fast I'm racking my brain for the right words to express what I've wanted to say for so long, until finally they come. For all the times you've rescued me, thank you so much. I bow as low as I can without face planting into the street. I can see the stone blocks of the road as a bead of sweat rolls down my nose and drops to the ground. The sounds of the people in the street around me seem distant, drowned out by the thumping drum in my chest. Neither of us moves for several seconds. I finally work up the courage to look up and straighten my back. Miss Wallenstein is just calmly standing there, with the slightest hint of a smile on her lips. Air escapes from my lungs again as a new wave of embarrassment shoots through my body. I lower my chin, hiding her smile behind my bangs. Even the butterflies in my stomach are blushing at this point. No one says a word. As the two of us stand in silence, the only thing moving is time. This is a bridge that all adventurers and normal people alike must cross. But all I'm able to do in the spacious front garden of the guild is stand there, unable to make a sound. You're doing well, in the dungeon? Why yes. She breaks the silence, and I respond as quickly as I can. She continues talking, her facial expression almost void of emotion. Looks like you can make it down to the 10th level now, that's impressive. No, not at all. I've only gotten that far because I have help. I've still got a long way to go. I haven't even come close to reaching my goal yet. Being complimented by my idol out of the blue like that is too much to handle. Here comes a new wave of panic. My hands fly up, shaking back and forth while my eyes spin. I mean, when I fight monsters in the dungeon, I'm just winging it like a total amateur. I don't know how many times a monster's almost gotten me. I know I have to get stronger, but I'm still just so weak and I don't feel like I'm getting better at all. Well, my nerves are squeezing words out of me at a rate I've never felt before. At this point, I don't know if I'm trying to sound humble or modest or what. Miss Wallenstein just stands there, staring silently at the panicked mess that's trying to talk to her, me. Finally, she moves. She reaches up slowly with one hand and strokes her chin, as if thinking about something. It takes me a few seconds to notice because I can't see straight, but I gain my bearings long enough to ask her a question.
Is something wrong?
She doesn't respond right away. Instead, a look of uncertainty passes over her face as she throws a punch at the air between us.
She holds that pose for a few more silent moments.
A look of nervousness overtakes her face before she opens her mouth to speak.
Shall I teach you how?
Huh?
How to fight.
You don't have anyone to teach you, am I right?
It takes me quite a while to understand what she is asking.
My eyes open wide. I feel like I'm going insane.
Why would you offer something like that? Because you look like you want to get stronger, I think.
I understand that feeling, says Miss Wallenstein, adding something about it being a way to pay me back for the trouble I went through.
How can she be so calm?
It feels like my head is about to explode.
I can learn how to fight? From her?
The very person who I want to catch up to will teach me?
Is that okay?
Am I understanding this correctly?
It's not a mistake?
I'm still nothing compared to her, and yet I have a chance to learn by her hand? Even physically touch her? But then there's the problem with her being in a different familia. My mind spins with questions, but they're no more than an attempt to hide my true feelings.
I want to talk to, know about, and spend time with her.
Just thinking about it makes me feel crazy, but the deepest place in my heart wants nothing more than an opportunity to be together with her. As all the thoughts swirling around with me are about to tear me apart, I think about the obvious answer and try to string the words into a response. Ace watched in silence as a very flustered Belle tried to collect his thoughts. There were no lies in what Ace had said to Belle a moment ago. She could hear his earnest desire to get stronger, and she could relate to him.
That was reality.
But of course, she didn't make the offer out of pure goodwill. There was something she wanted to know. The first hint of something different was the silverback. Then it was the fact he'd made it down to the 10th level. Ace had seen this boy pull off one miracle after another, witnessing an unbelievable amount of growth in his skills and abilities in a very short amount of time. The raw newbie she happened to run into during the Minotaur incident had improved enough to draw her interest.
How'd he do it?
She wanted to know the secret of his growth. Study it. For herself. This was a major reason why she'd offered to train him. I don't know what you could do with how I am now, but if you're going to offer. At the same time, she felt a bit guilty. The boy believed that her suggestion was based on pure generosity. Hiding her true motives from him made her heart twinge. Belle held his head as he spoke, words once again leaking out of his mouth as Ace calmly watched. She grabbed the hilt of the sword at her waist as a way of cutting through her own misgivings. You Miss Wallenstein. The boy looked up. His face was still red, making his stark white hair more intense than usual. But his eyes were focused as he looked into hers, before throwing his body into a deep bow. I will learn everything you are willing to teach.
At last, a strong response.
Looking at the resolve in his eyes, Ace promised herself that as a way to apologize for her true motives, she would do everything in her power to meet his expectations.
Very well. I will do my best.
Chapter 2. Ox and Hare Special Training. The sky is covered in darkness. The sun hasn't yet risen in the eastern sky, but the horizon is beginning to lighten. It's that moment before dawn when you're not sure if it's night or morning. The city wall, I've never been up here before. I woke up much earlier than normal this morning and climbed up to the top of the wall encircling the city of Arario. I'm standing on the northwest edge. Looking back inside over the city, the view is absolutely breathtaking. I can see the Pantheon, the Colosseum, buildings that are probably home to large familiars, and other tall structures all at once. Even from this distance, I can make out the minute details of the craftsmanship on each of them. Color me impressed. But of course, there's one that stands out above all the rest in the center of the city, Babel Tower. Its sheer presence is almost overwhelming. Add in the little houses filling the city blocks, and I know I will never get tired of standing here. Looking up and down the main streets that separate Arario into 8 pieces, most buildings' lights are dim. It's almost like the clamor of the city is quieting. One by one, specks of light go out as magic lamps are being shut off all over the place. And to think, I actually live in this metropolis. Shivers go down my spine and my heart beats faster with excitement every time I remember where I am. Are you prepared?
Ah, why yes. Her voice ringing like a bell in my ears, I turn around to face Miss Wallenstein. She's the reason I'm here right now. I'm going to learn how to fight. She said that her familia, Loki familia, is going on an expedition in a few days. So we don't have much time, but she'll work with me until she leaves. That's why we decided yesterday to start training today. Sorry to make you come all the way out here. Don't worry. It's not a problem. Being a member of Loki familia, this is something she isn't supposed to do. If another member of her familia finds out that she's training a member of a different group in combat techniques, there will be major problems for sure. That's why we've come all the way to the top of the wall, to stay out of sight. Thinking about it from her position, staying hidden and only meeting occasionally is the only option. As for why we're here so early, I need to go into the dungeon like normal to make money. So rather than train after a hard day's work, it makes more sense to do this first. Well, Miss Wallenstein, what should I? Ace. Huh? Call me Ace. The second I realize she's telling me how to address her, I nearly fall over backward. Everyone calls me that. Does it make you uncomfortable? No, I'm comfortable with that. Why would I refuse? I say to myself with my hand over my mouth. Something in her voice sounds like she'll be disappointed if I don't call her by her first name. My cheeks flush red. Of course, there hasn't been much time when I've stood in front of Miss Wallenstein, Ace, and not been bright red. Anyway, hopefully I've been able to convey some impression of how strange this situation is. Ace, what should I do now? A good question. Huh? Her voice is slightly heavy. How should I react to that? Ace's eyebrows fall as she puts a hand to her delicate chin. She looks like she's trying to squeeze an idea out of her brain. I've been thinking very hard, since yesterday. Her head snaps the other way as if her neck is on a spring, like a child being scolded. Where's all the grace and refinement she's always had? This is strange. My idol, my Ace Wallenstein, and the real person are drifting apart. Can you show me your form? Why yes, sure. I do what she said, working a light sweat in the process. Taking my dagger out, and feeling a bit embarrassed, I take 2 or 3 swipes at the air beside me as she watches. She just stares at me, eyes following me intently. Do you only use your knife? Eh? The knife wielders I know use kicks and martial arts to fight. Come to think of it, she's right. When fighting in the dungeon, I rely completely on my weapon. I can count on one hand the number of times I've kicked or punched a monster. I look down at my limbs for a moment before Ace says, "Give it to me," and takes the weapon out of my hand. She strikes a pose. I guess she's going to show me an example. Like this. She's holding the dagger backward in her right hand, the blade coming out from behind her pinky, and her left knee is forward, foot hovering just above the ground. With her knee in midair, Ace tilts her head to the side. She puts her leg back down, and lifts it up one more time, again tilting her head to the side. Ace lifts and lowers her knee over and over, and each time she tilts her head. At this point, I can't hide my sweat or my confusion. It feels really awkward, watching her like this. But she's giving me an example to follow. I should watch as closely as I can. Does she just not have a clue? Was my last thought. Ace's body suddenly blurred, as though she'd taken hold of something. Huh? Using her right leg to jump into the air with a smack, her whole body spins. Completely ignoring the stunned sounds coming out of my mouth, she extends her left leg, tracing an arc around her in the air. Her miniskirt flutters, dark blue leggings up to her knees flash before my eyes. The instant her pale white inner thigh flashes in front of my eyes, I'm launched skyward. A high-speed spinning jump kick. I'd been too close to the frighteningly fast kick of a top-class adventurer. I both see it and don't as her foot hits me square in the chest and sends me flying toward the edge of the city wall.